Hi, Emily. Welcome.
Hi, Shira. Thank you.
I'm gonna go ahead and drop a link to a working document for you all to collaborate. And then I might head off and assign you as the host if that's okay.
Yep, sounds
Okay,
good.
perfect.
I also hope I've been thinking about you, Ashira, and hoping that you and your community have been recovering okay from Hurricane Milton.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's been really interesting, but we have the electricity back finally, and
Good.
um the down trees are starting to be picked up. So returning to normal. And it could have been a lot worse than it was. So I'm counting my blessings.
Good. Thanks for that update.
Yeah, thanks. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and head out, and I'll assign you as the host.
Sounds good.
Hey, how's it going? Oops.
Hey, Mia. Good. How are you?
Good.
Shira hopped off already, but
Okay.
she made me the host. I can make you the host now. Um,
Yeah, if you're able to do that, that would be great. Looks like I am, I think. Okay,
yeah,
yep.
I think I just made you the host.
And we have three of us, which is good. I was 100% sure we would get it together. This is a late announcement. So, hi, Ben.
Hey there. I am sick today, so I'm gonna participate without my camera on, but I'll be here. So
That's fine. I didn't get the full download from Ashira, but I'm hoping this works. So I did put this on, where's the chat? I did put, I did get the Google Doc from Ashira so that we can hopefully edit at the same time instead of me needing to edit on the screen.
perfect.
So
Okay.
why don't you both give that a try, and see if you can actually like get into the document and see if you can you edit?
I'm in and I can edit.
So Ben should be able to
Yep.
too.
Same. Yep.
Okay. Um, Okay, so the formatting got a little bit wonky. I think we should just like not worry about this because it'll have to get back in Word eventually. So it's fine if you make changes, but it did get a little weird when I copied and pasted. So in looking sort of what we've got, I would, talking about the schedule with the share, I would love for sort of this to be the last time we touch the renters, just in terms of the other stuff we've got going on. I don't know, like practically if we will get through everything, but I want to make sure we have two sessions to talk about low-income households. That'll kind of eat up the rest of our time before we really need to be putting it together. So Ashira will be sending out a document which will put sort of someone in charge of finalizing all these sections, and then we'll have a second person do some editing help. Let's have a second person do some editing help to kind of get this over the finish line. But I think we should consider sort of this is it for renter content, and if there's anything we didn't get to, we'll just have to have that person complete it to get with whatever we didn't get to. So Ben, did you want to talk about, I see right before this you sent some draft rule comments. You did want to talk about this briefly today?
We don't necessarily need to, I guess, because this is set aside for the final report. But
I think it's
yeah,
allowable.
yeah,
Can I,
sure, yeah.
sorry to interrupt. I just have a question about the working document, so I'll pipe in after you go, Ben.
No, it's okay. Go for it. Is it
Okay,
do
sorry to
you
interrupt.
no.
I just was wondering, is this, we only have renters and landlords in the report working document. Is that just because this is only what we've worked on so far as like this subgroup? And then like the next time we have an updated thing that we all work on together, we'll pull that from the outline. Is that kind of how we're working on this?
Yeah, I don't know that I fully even, because basically Ashira gave me a blank Google Doc and I pulled like basically our progress from last time. This is I think what we did last time and what was shared with the group. So we're just kind of picking up where we left off. I don't know, for simplicity's sake, if we will have like a single working document until closer to the end, just because it's going to be like super long. But there's not, I guess I would say there's not really a method to this. I just sort of plopped in where I thought we left off, if that makes sense.
Yep. I just wanted to make sure if there was a process, I got it.
Yeah, I can talk to Ashira about the best way to do it. I just don't want it to get too cumbersome, and I want to make sure that stuff's kind of backed up. And so I think this is more of a working area kind of thing.
Got it. Okay.
Okay. Sounds good. So I'm just pulling up Ben's draft rule edits, and I can share my screen since we don't have that in the Google Doc, and we can just sort of briefly talk about, I just want to make sure I've got it. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. I'm hoping I've got the right thing set up. Okay. So you're seeing these edits? Okay, so everyone is seeing that, yeah?
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
great. And yeah, just for sort of the record, these are the comments that we prepared in the last working group that were presented to the last meeting of the EAG last Tuesday, and then the EAG directed Ben to write some additional context based on our discussion, so we're ready to finalize it at next Tuesday's meeting. So let's see. I'm trying to think, do you want to draw our attention, Ben, to like specific stuff you edited? I can see if I can
I think, yeah, I had track changes on.
Okay.
There we go. Yep. So I added context right at the top there for, what's the language in the Act, Section 8124.
Yeah.
And, explicitly calling out LMI installed measures as having, 10 years, measure lives of 10 years or more, and being a qualified capital investment. So that language, I think, is really key to our discussion around the portable heat pump discussion that we had last week, just because, we had a lengthy discussion about whether or not that qualifies as a capital investment. I think we decided that it does not, or likely does not, and also that measure lives of 10 years or more. In teasing that out, I am under the impression that these portable heat pumps only have a 1-year warranty, which indicates to me that probably doesn't qualify for measure life of 10 years or more, considering like, an average installed heat pump typically has a warranty of around 10 to 12 years.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
It's funny, when I actually did like look at this originally when we were drafting this, I was like, oh, like how long does an air conditioner last? And people usually said that it should last for 10 years. I'm wondering if that's because it's a like sort of novel technology, but that is a good point. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and it's definitely conceivable that these could last for 10. Obviously, it depends on, the user and stuff and how you store it. But yeah, so I did include that there, and basically, let's see. Yeah, the discussion, the larger paragraph there with a few edits that says, utilizing the same technology. I just kind of clarified that, they are in fact heat pumps. They're the same thing. They're just not, don't have that 10-year life. And then, yeah, basically just kind of reworded it essentially. I didn't do any major substantive changes to the section. Just kind of reworded it to make it flow nice, and called out specifically that 10-year life or more. And in kind of looking at that, I think, we had a discussion about the TRM. I think obviously that's more tag related, but I think you could, this still should be an eligible measure. I think we talked about, I don't think anyone's doubting that it should not be, or saying it should not be. But yeah, the TRM needs, basically, it can have basically a generic definition in the TRM. I think the tag's going to have to come up with the language there, but you know, it's going to have to be based off estimates for savings, et cetera, probably similar to like a 9,000 BTU heat pump. But I know Ashira had sent out some kind of task that said, you know, Ben should draft like some language for the TRM. I kind of wanted to punt that to the tag. I think folks over there could kind of easily create that.
Yeah,
But yeah,
for context, I did speak to Rick about this. He was actually of the opinion, Rick, the chair of the tag, it was an informal conversation, so I don't want to like put words in his mouth that aren't there, but he was sort of on first impression of the opinion that this is a heat pump and there's no reason it shouldn't be, included. And he seemed to be of the opinion that the tag was not really going to take this up now because it's not really happening, but he didn't think it would be sort of a big deal for someone, the department or an obligated party to just petition to allow this, and then they would adopt, it into the TRM, and it didn't have to be part of the triennial process. And again, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but didn't seem to think this was a big deal. I mean, he didn't really have as much of an opinion about the capital and, the capital investment. He said he didn't think it was obviously not a capital investment, but like,
right.
was just kind of like, I don't know about that. So he thinks that there could be sort of credit issues related to it, but he doesn't seem to think it's going to be a problem to get these
Okay.
into use as a clean measure from a strictly technical point of view. So
Yeah, and I would agree with that. Yeah, I see where he's going with that one. I think, you know, the issue that we're trying to highlight here is really that the act explicitly says that, you know, an installed measure for a low income or LMI credit needs to have that 10-year life in the capital investment. So, you know, I think for it to count as an LMI, I think there may need to be a discussion about some sort of amendment, statutory amendment that would allow this, unless, you know, some sort of, I guess, testing or, yeah, I think there may need to be a statutory amendment basically to allow a portable heat pump. And I think that's kind of what we're getting at in these comments. We don't explicitly say it here, but, you know, we do point out that, like, you know, this is, you know, we need to ensure that this is allowable because, you know, it's a lot of LMI folks are likely to adopt this.
To me, it sounds like we're asking for there to be some flexibility in terms of adopting new measures if with those definitions. So I feel like
That's a good
a
point. Yeah.
simple fix would just be like the equity advisory group would find that some flexibility in these definitions and inclusion of new measures like a portable heat pump would allow for upcoming technologies that may help with the split incentive or affect those at risk in Vermont to transition. So yeah, that would be my
Yeah.
recommendation.
I agree with, I think that's a good one. Yeah. But the language doesn't currently exist in the statute that's kind of says that. So are you suggesting basically that some simple language such as like what you just said be added?
Yeah, I think keeping it simple makes more sense instead of like us coming up with the technical language. And I think that a statutory fix could be simple and allowing some
Straightforward.
flexibility there. Yeah.
To me,
Yeah, I like that.
I think the problem for me is one, there's kind of like interlocking levels of like, is this a clean heat measure already? Answers probably yes. So I think you don't need to change that part, but like we should make sure we should make sure that they don't have to change that part. Like it doesn't have to be separately enumerated as a clean heat measure, which so far everyone thinks okay, but I think Dominic was at least a little bit like, oh, I don't know that we know if that for sure, but it seems like from a tag perspective, it's probably okay. And then, after that, I think the question of what the legislature meant by qualified capital investment and the whole measure lives of 10 years or more, like, I think it's kind of a gray area where to me, it's the intent of making sure there's a benefit for the household and you do things that change people's, help them save money, which is specifically, mentioned. And I just don't think they were thinking of like the existence of a technology that could potentially still have benefits, but not be that. And so I think it's kind of in a weird, like, there are these stacking assumptions of like, well, to what extent unclear is it already, and like what parts of it actually would need to be changed. Like, I honestly think this is something we can just flag for the legislature and be like, you're the legislative experts, like decide if it's in or out already. Like there's a chance it is already in. I mean, the 10-year, it's a good point, Ben, about the 10 years or more, but I assume once these things actually become like market worthy, a 10-year warranty for something that's like $3 grand or $4 grand, I forget the cost, like seems reasonable to me. And I assume the market will expect a reasonable warranty on something so expensive.
I agree with flagging this for the commission. And then on the warranty piece, I'm curious, Ben, where you got that information, the like
My
shorter
colleague, I was
warranty.
chatting with my colleague at the department who was diving into it, Matthew Baker Poole, and he was like, he flagged it for me. It was like, hey, these only have 1 year warranty. So I guess I could reach out to him. He seemed to be reading the same information that I was. So, but
I
good
did,
question. I'm taking his word for it, I suppose, but I trust him. So,
yeah, I just wonder, so I did talk to the person, the staff person at Efficiency Vermont last week who is running this pilot program. And the update on that, just for awareness, is that it's still really early on in the pilot phase, like it hasn't even begun yet. And that in terms of like where this technology is entering the market, it's not in the market and not in any other state as well. So like New York has a pilot, and then I think one other state has a pilot, but Vermont is like one of the few states that are starting a pilot. So I wonder, I know you mentioned this, Ben, but like I feel like maybe adding like the possibility of a short warranty, knowing that these pilots are going to dictate, I think, a lot of that information, like the warranty and um, how they
yeah.
show up in the market, knowing that there's just a lot of uncertainty around
Yep. Yeah. There certainly is. Yeah.
technology.
There's, or I shouldn't say certainly is no, yeah, there's a lot of uncertainty. Yeah, I agree.
And I think just getting this out and being like, don't set anything in stone that you like aren't kind of prepared to undo before 3 years, or like without needing a legislative fix if we think there's real promise. Like it just, a lot can happen in a year. Like these might be really on the market in a year in a way that they're not now. And yeah, I just think it's hard to know what pieces are kind of going to be easy to change in the future and what aren't. And I think I think throwing it in front of the PUC and the legislature being like, what did you mean by this language? And if we have this sort of interesting technology, is it going to have a place? I think that's fine. I think Rick's only other feedback was just sort of like, well, if you don't know it fails to meet the definition of a qualified capital investment, just say it could, rather than I think I said likely fails, and he was just kind of like, I would just say may fail or something like that. And I could link to
Right.
some. I've spent some time on like like the IRS handbook on qualified cap, and it doesn't give a clear definition. It's just like, I don't know, like a microwave isn't a one, and like a portable air conditioner probably isn't, but then like a light fixture can be a qualified capital investment depending on, so there's not like going to be like an okay list and a not okay list. So I don't know if we want to take whoever's reading this down a rabbit trail of like, I kind of want someone else to weigh in on that who's honestly like a lawyer or like a tax professional or something.
Yeah, I would
I
agree. Yeah, that's a great point. I think probably it does come down to like the syntax here and like basically saying instead of likely fails, we should probably, yes, I'd probably say could. I
Yeah,
guess,
so we
yeah,
could
the whole point of this broadly is the sense that I'm getting, and I agree, is that we're really just want to flag this issue like, hey, this is, as Emily just mentioned, this is not like this isn't widely adopted yet. Obviously, it's coming down the pike here. We want to just make sure everyone's like aware of it because from an equity perspective, this could be a game changer. And yeah, so I think that's probably the role that we're trying to fill here.
Yeah, okay. I think that's fine. I don't know if it's going to make it in this one, but I think someone should. Yeah, okay. So, and then you had some other comments, Ben, about
Yeah, this is a little bit more substantive.
yeah.
The multifamily conversation. I started thinking about the multifamily conversation we had and how we were talking about, it was a wide ranging conversation, but really with multifamily buildings, we were talking about how we wanted to encourage, obligated parties to participate in serving multifamily properties, particularly those with low income more, which we can all agree on. But I started thinking, okay, if we say, hey, in a 4-unit building, you only need 1 unit to qualify, like the weatherization program does. That I think is good for weatherization because it's a whole building kind of entire dwelling benefit when you weatherize the whole multifamily property. But I think we could end up kind of it could be some weird territory when you're thinking about a heat pump, for example. If you were to have, I gave like an explicit example, if you scroll down slightly,
Yep.
of basically a 4-unit building where you have, let's say, a 4-unit building, you have 3 units in that building that are market rate, 1 unit is low income. If that one low income unit were to have a heat pump installed, what we'd effectively be setting the precedent for is like, okay, I only need to install 1 heat pump in that whole building, and then I get 4 units worth of LMI, but only 1 unit is being served. So I think we just need to be careful there. And it does, hate to add more complexity to it, but it is true, is that I think for installed measures that benefit the whole building, I think like a lower threshold is good because it would encourage more multifamily buildings to be weatherized. But with installed measures that only benefit a specific unit, and you can kind of prove that, like with a heat pump, that that's only heating that 1 unit or cooling that 1 unit. Only that unit should be credited, not the whole building, because you could end up with a situation where obligated parties kind of reach their LMI target much quicker than they actually should be, and low and moderate income folks end up missing out because these market rate units are being counted as LMI. That makes sense. It's nuanced for sure, but I think the nuance matters in this case.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I think you're right in how to characterize it. I don't worry as much. Like I honestly think serving any renters at all is like a pretty clear benefit just because the split incentive is like such a challenge. So I'm kind of like, I mean, there aren't that many higher income renters, like proportionally, like you're kind of more likely to, even if you're not hitting like 60% AMI below, you're not super likely to have sort of lower income and higher income households and like much higher income in the same building. Like I think there's definitely a unit mix, but it's probably not like people at 200% AMI living with people at 50% AMI. Like I don't think that happens that often. So I think more likely that you're going to get a people of the sort of lower middle income, and like if it's a benefit to just finding at least one sort of low income household and sort of pulling in some other households because of that, like I guess I totally understand what you mean. I don't have strong objections to it. I just don't think it's necessarily a harm to sort of accidentally overclaim low income credits as long as you are actually helping renters, and they're probably at least, based on the unit mix of one low income person, you're probably getting some lower moderate income people. So I mean that's also nuanced. I just think as a policy, like I'm personally less concerned about sort of over claiming low income credits, but that's I think you can make reasonable arguments for both and not be, inequitable or wrong about either of those.
Yep, and I agree. Yeah, I'm not you know, super for either direction. I guess I just wrote this up quick so we could consider it. But you make a good point. I also kind of thought about what you just said, and I was just like, the likelihood of this example I just wrote down is slim. I have seen it happen before,
Yeah,
but
sure.
of course, but yeah, I guess as long as because yeah, it's probably not going to happen in that many instances. I suppose for administrative complexity, it definitely makes more sense to just have that kind of use what the weatherization assistance program uses and kind of leave it at that. But we also, to your point, yeah, maybe it doesn't matter as much as what I'm suggesting here. And the multifamily property, housing stock, as we know, is generally older than the single family housing stock, and does typically house more low income residents. So maybe just making any investment in those properties, or encouraging any investment is just kind of the goal of the program rather than really getting down to the nitty gritty. I suppose you could change this rule as things move along through time. If we see like some kind of distortion happening, like I'm suggesting here. But yeah, I'm fine with deleting that language. I just wanted to kind of write it down and raise the issue to the group. So yeah, I I think from a verification standpoint, from the department's perspective, I think it certainly would be easier to just go with that one qualifier for the whole building, like weatherization, like the WAP program does. So
Okay, I don't want to, like, again, I don't feel super opposed to it. I'd be fine either moving it now if, that's what you think is best, or just bringing it back to the group and seeing what the thoughts are. I mean,
yeah,
I
I
think
would be
you could
interested to see
argue
what Jeff thinks about it because he has, obviously administers that program and just getting, you know, income information. I guess what I'm suggesting here is that we would know all 4 units income, and the likelihood of that is also very slim,
both.
because just the fact that, I think LMI Vermonters are, if they're already, for example, the weatherization program, they're more incentivized to fill out that income information, for example. So yeah, I guess we'll leave it in here. We can kind of raise the same issues to the full EAG and just get a reaction there, and then decide one way or the other. But I can see a world in which either way is fine. I guess, yeah. To your point, I don't see a major downside in either way, I guess, but I just wanted to raise it.
Sure, yeah, and I mean, I think it will be, I think the heat pump thing is really specific, but a lot of the time the building, it's gonna revert to, it's too hard to figure out which things benefit which units, like the whole heating system and the weatherization example.
Right. And I mean, I guess I will note, it actually might be beneficial to the weatherization program for in terms of revenue and credit, how much credit they're getting, because we know that they're going to be the recipients of all the credits, all the activity they're doing, they're going to get the credits for it automatically. So let's say they do install a heat pump with some federal funds that they have in, like, say, in one of the units, they will now, in a 4 unit building, they're going to get, credit for the building. I guess the credits are still going to be tied to GHG reduction, though. So
Yeah.
I suppose this is a moot point. Yeah, now that I kind of talk it out, but um, yeah, the nuances of clean heat standard, I suppose, is yet again. So
Yeah, I mean, I guess from a like they could have a different, I wonder if this really took off. Like you couldn't use federal or WAP funding, but I wonder if there's a long-term scenario where the WAP sort of gets into moderate income weatherization because of like you know what I mean? If there's a WAP eligible household and a non-WAP eligible household, or I
yeah,
don't know. I don't want to expect them to change their whole business model. I'm just saying, like, maybe there's a world where they could take clean heat standard money and invest it into like the non-WAP unit heat pump or something. I don't know.
yeah.
I guess that's like a long-term thing.
Yeah, that would depend on like the program restriction or the funding
Mhm.
restrictions, but actually you raising that, I think like that could be a really kind of a policy win to have clean heat standard revenue generated from the activity they're already doing in the low income sector spill over into the moderate income sector to basically make more gains and then have it be like a self-revolving. So I guess the longer I talk about that and hearing your opinions, I mean, I wrote this like an hour ago and did it really quickly, so I'm not like, going to fall on the sword here. So we could delete it and just go with the 25% um, language, or the basically do whatever weatherization is doing.
I'll just send it back to you and you can send it to the group since you said you were going to do it, and I'll just like put our comments in there. I was thinking I didn't make any I put like comments but not edits on here. I think the only thing I said is this technology could fail, not will likely fail.
Mhm.
So I'll just send it back to you and you can send it to the group and sort of polish this up without comments, however you want.
Cool.
And then I just want to see, did you make any changes to this?
Beyond that, I did not. No. All right. Yeah, I've added one sentence down here. I just added and other relevant state agencies, in case there's other agencies that are also collecting, income verification.
Yeah, I think that sounds right. And should we say the commission or should we say the commission and the department? I don't want to like make it
Probably
weird.
yes. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll just say the commission and the department of.
Yeah.
I hear both ways. Is it the Public Service Department or the Department of Public Service is the right one?
Well, in the abbreviation form we say PSD so that people don't think we're affiliated with the Department of Public Safety.
Right, but it is the
Uh,
Department of Public Service.
Hey, yes.
Okay.
You know what?
It's okay. I don't want to put you on the spot. I think I've been
Uh,
just interchangeably doing it, and I'm like, maybe.
yeah, Department of Public Service. I actually just checked the website real quick to make sure because it's like I feel like people say it interchangeably even within the department. So yeah, it's
Mhm.
Department of Public Service, but on Zoom we tend to say PSD. So
Okay, so I am going to stop sharing, save that. I think this is still in the spirit of what we discussed, and Ben, if you want to just sort of make one last polishing up, we'll include it in the packet when we send that out to the group tomorrow. Okay.
yeah, I'll get that basically ready to vote on
Okay,
at
sounds
the
good.
next meeting.
Yeah, that would be great. I'll save that and I'll send these small edits to edits, okay, so there's that, and now I'll direct I'll take one round of public comment since we kind of reached an inflection point around a different subject. So Alex, Anthea, if you either of you want to do public comment, raise your digital hand. Otherwise, we'll move on. Give you a second. Okay, nothing from Anthea. Okay, we'll give another opportunity at the end of this. Okay, so I am back in the EAG report writing document. Let's see. Okay, I feel like I did a few of the things that have kind of my Mia to add kind of stuff, but I would really like to make sure that we keep this productive, and so maybe getting into identifying recommendations and then we can circle back with like citations and stuff if that becomes helpful later.
That sounds good to me. One update is that I have been talking to folks who work on the renters program at EVT, and I had to do some thinking about what data exactly I wanted to pull for this. So I have a data request in, and it might take probably the rest of the week to get that back. So I don't have it today, but I'll have it before the next tag meeting and definitely before the next report writing meeting. I know that we wanted to be done with this, but yeah.
I don't think we should be done. I just think we have to move on as a group. So, and
Yeah.
I think if there's something fairly like non-substantive that was just like, oh, we'd love to have like a citation, the report writer can do it, and we'll find a way to get that into the public deliberation on this. Yeah, I think next week we'll be discussing the draft rule, and then we realize that we haven't really covered implementation and like what we think should be sort of the follow-up process for the clean heat standards. So that will be the main discussion, and then the one after that we'll have to sort of see which sections are sort of ready enough to sort of adopt. So I'd love to get this one done relatively soon, but Tuesday is not the goal. So okay, so I'm gonna go through let's see what we got. So I'm gonna probably go straight to I mean, I did have questions. Let's see if we should get back to it. I did have questions about the Burlington weatherization ordinance because it does sort of feed into other things, but I guess we could always just have someone independently research that.
Yeah, I did not have a chance to super dive into that.
That's fine.
If I'm honest, it's been pretty
I'd love to
busy.
just get some numbers like, well, let's I wrote some sort of draft proposal language for recommendations that I think we've heard from the group. So let's see what we need or what we don't. I'm going to recommend that we take this benefits and harms and we cut it out because we talked about sort of escalating that, and I'll make sure that this sort of gets into the hands of whoever's doing a high level benefits harms thing, because we talked about how repetitive this is likely to be. So are we okay with, I don't think there's anything super in here. I mean, I'm hearing about potential harms that's talking about, we talked about the split incentive kind of already. And we talk a little bit about the multifamily housing challenges.
To clarify, Mia, you're saying, are we going to have a potential harms and benefits that's like more general for the clean heat standard, and then just keep the specific things to renters in this? Is that what you're
Yeah,
suggesting?
and I think, well, when we looked at this last time, especially the benefits, I mean, the benefits are kind of like doing more of existing programs that help renters, and everybody using less fossil fuels is kind of, I think, where that was going. So I think we had talked about sort of escalating that to sort of an earlier section of the report, like on the large level where we see the harms coming in. And then I think we can talk about, when we talk about sort of we've talked about technical and financial challenges. I think a lot of that is we've discovered is general sort of adaptation and transition challenges, and not specifically like what the clean heat standard does. I mean, we talked about the financial challenges of the split incentive here, so I'm open to ways of doing it, but I think we just talked about the idea of like a benefit section in all of them, kind of saying the same thing over and over again. But I do think it has to be handled carefully to make sure that we kind of talk about the benefits and harms in a sort of encompassing way. Does that make sense?
I think
Okay, and
so.
we can go through and just see. So the benefits, I mean, we're talking about lowering costs in the long run, more comfortable living, need to do emissions reductions for legal and social purposes. And then the harms, I'm trying to think. Yeah, I mean, some of these are sort of specific. Okay. I'm just thinking about the best way to do this. So, I guess we are saying that in a single family home, the burden is pretty straightforward. Like the burden kind of belongs to the household. And if you did something to like, I mean, I guess with the split incentive, like we've talked about the idea about the cost not being sort of equitable. I guess if you sort of made landlords do something, it does potentially, result in shifting costs to tenants, or displacing tenants. I wonder if some of this could go into like, I don't actually know if I agree with this section that I'm highlighting here, that the financial burden is shifted to the tenants because of costs associated with CHS compliance, because landlords aren't obligated parties. And I mean, if landlords are already paying for heating and rent, then they might increase rent because of that. But we know that's not like super common. I mean, right now it's just the landlord doesn't pay for heat for the most part. And not all, I mean, there's plenty of cases where it does. I guess I'm just like, I don't think it's related to compliance.
I wonder if what we're trying to say here is that there's concerns around the split incentive being further aggravated under the clean heat standard without.
And maybe we should say, like, so I'm going to just copy it and I'm going to put it here to talk about policy and funding gaps. So I'm just trying to see. Wait, so it's financial challenges. So what if we put that here, and put this kind of like, we're talking about the split incentive, and then we could say, like there in terms of, I guess I just don't know that the landlords, I mean, if landlords are charging tenants for heat, and like they will shift that cost onto tenants too. Like if heating goes up and they include it, if they don't pay for it, it's kind of the status quo, and landlords aren't like more likely, no one's making them do anything with just a clean heat standard. So
Yeah, and also the language here about increased electricity costs, I
Oh, yeah, that seems
don't know if that's really substantiated.
unlikely. Yeah.
No one's like increasing this is about fossil fuels, so presumably because we have the energy efficiency charge, basically electric rates, we subsidize those or
Mhm.
design those in a way that it's, cheaper than fossil fuels to encourage people to electrify.
Yeah,
Relative to natural gas, it can be more expensive, yes.
I don't know if this is like, unfortunately, I think our intern totally did her best, but I think sometimes someone will have just said something sort of random in our meetings that's like not, I don't think she knew what to do with some sort of like statements that were in there. So maybe we could say if something to the effect of if the landlord does include heat in rent, the tenant is likely to ultimately, I don't want to bear any increased costs resulting from a clean that could, I don't want to be too certain about this, is likely to bear any increased cost that could result from a clean heat standard. And then if tenants pay for heat, then increase, then so I might have to do words, but then they will bear any increased costs without the ability to easily reduce their fuel use. I think that could be wordsmith. And then maybe we just sort of delete this. I mean, I think there is something there where we talked about something about where was it? I thought she said something about rent stabilization too here. Harms. I think we could just say something to the effect of like, in addition, if a landlord does benefit from incentives to improve their property, I guess I'm just saying like, the tenant could be at greater risk for displacement if the unit can be rented to a higher income tenant. So does that, I mean, does that kind of, I think that gets to, I mean, it's not, it does speak to like, this does blur the lines between like existing financial challenges and then like clean heat standard additional challenges. I just don't want to have like a lot of different sections, you know what I mean? So,
Yeah, I think what you just wrote makes sense.
okay.
Because I know we couldn't, do this with the Clean Heat Center program, but I mean, it is a reality that, like, for example, weatherization program builds into their contracts when they do multifamily properties is that I think Jeff has identified this at past meetings is I believe it's 1 year after weatherization occurs, they're not allowed to raise rent.
Um, oh,
Basically
in that?
stabilization. Yeah, in the weatherization program. So I think that's basically what you just said there is that, if I haven't heard anybody suggest this for the Clean Heat Standard, and I don't think it should be there because it would be, way too overreaching, I think. But yeah, we're just getting at the fact that, yeah, when landlords make investments in the property, then, presumably that property is now worth more. It's more attractive to renters broadly, so they could, raise the rent and cause folks to not afford them anymore. I think just a quick, well, you just wrote quick one sentence. I don't think there's much more to really say there because who knows if that'll happen, but it needs to be pointed out.
I'll just say without additional restrictions tied to the funding source. Okay, so I'm gonna go back down here to this potential benefits and potential harm. So I think that kind of covers it. I mean, these potential harms are, I think, really specific to renters, which I think is good, but I think we can fit them in other sections. And I think the benefits are pretty standard, and we could sort of pop that into a section about the benefits in general. I just don't want us to say like people can save money for the heat pumps in like every single section, because yeah, that's true, but needs to kind of be said once at the beginning. So I have like a little scratch notes pad that I will put this in, and let me just make sure I get that in my notepad. And that way, I'll see, and this isn't like, we do have the original drafts elsewhere too, so it's not like it's like never going to happen, but I think that'll be just good to just get rid of that. So, or keep that elsewhere. Okay. Okay, so there is that. And then let's see what else we've got on here. So, recommendations. So I have some pretty baked language that I think we could take a look at. I don't think it's necessarily finalized on sort of 2 recommendations that aren't here. And I'm also just hearing some stuff in here that I don't know is like sort of baked enough to make work, or maybe belongs in here. Which do you want to do? Do we want to try to clean up these recommendations, or go with the ones that I think are like potentially a little bit more developed? What are our thoughts?
I think let's do what we think, like the more developed ones. Let's get
Okay.
those on there, and then it's possible some of those might address some of the other.
Yeah.
Other ones.
Okay, sounds good. I drafted sort of 3, a little more than that, sections, and we can kind of see some of them overlap, but I'm going to try to get this into sort of usable work. So I'm going to put this in. And I can take us through what I was thinking. Oh, and it did weird stuff to it. Okay, Google Docs just does not like this. Okay. So, and I tried to put a little text box thing in it, but it's not, didn't like that either. So bear with me for a sec.
Sure. Page are you on?
I am under recommendations, and I just stuck the text in.
Okay, yeah, I see it.
Italicized everything, and I don't think it's gonna let me do this like text box thing that I put in. I'll screenshot it and I'll put it in as a picture, and then we can figure out how we want to do it. I did know that doing this in Google Docs, which is nice that we can all edit, is just going to be rough. So let me just okay. Does not seem like it was worth it, but so the first recommendation I had was to consider weatherization for sort of moderate income, non-WAP eligible properties. And I think this was the sort of least sure I was least thing I was least sure on, but I think it has some potential. I think there's a gap with, I think we should argue in the low income section that we need, substantial investment in WAP. Like, I think that will be something we talk about when we get to that section and have. I was talking about I think this could be a way to sort of combine, like, I think my premise is if we're going to sort of let me stop. Like, so I think the idea, which I think Pike was right to challenge because we don't really know the extent to which it's true, but like, I think it's going to be hard to get landlords to, on a large scale, weatherize all their buildings without making them or just paying for like a lot of it. Again, I think Pike was right to point out that there's some complexity and how deep are them, how deep are the benefits? And Emily was going to sort of contribute some content about like how many rental projects are being weatherized in the moderate income space. But I was thinking like the state could try some things to sort of get into the non-WAP eligible space. And they've had a lot of success with the housing improvement program to bring like substandard rentals up to code. And I just wondered if there was a way to sort of do something more comprehensive, but not WAP that has been done before, and tie some restrictions to it to keep the unit affordable. But I don't, yeah, so I don't know. It's funny. This is the thing I kind of wrote last and was least confident about, but I thought it was worth at least engaging with. I don't know if either of you have any thoughts on whether this is recommendation territory or not for us.
I think it absolutely is.
Okay.
I mean, moderate, really, the conversations that I've kind of, heard and read about, I think really point to the fact that I think we've talked about it, over the course of the past year here, is that, the folks that are like 81% AMI that are not eligible for weatherization assistance, they of course are eligible for like that, up to I think it's like 75% off of their weatherization project, etc. So like expansion of moderate income weatherization, I think, especially given the affordability crisis in the state, I think makes a ton of sense. And could be is a strong recommendation, and I think a popular one. So
Do you
I
think
agree.
the VHIP or the WAP programs doing this? I mean, it was kind of like if you're doing this with VHIP anyways, maybe you could take it like I couldn't find great data on it says VHIP can include weatherization, but that's not really what they're trying to do. So I don't know if they're I imagine it varies. I could try to find out, but I don't know if they're doing it kind of beyond like you're just bringing it to code or taking it to like comprehensive weatherization territory. I could check on that.
actually,
I
I
don't
don't
know
know
if it
much about that
matters.
program, but
Yeah, I mean, I could ask him some people who do.
I mean, it sounds like the wording, the way you've described it here, it's because we know, of course, that building energy codes are not enforceable at
Mhm.
the moment. Uh, so yeah, they're probably talking about just like literally redoing the apartments so that they are like probably I'm thinking like replacing the kitchen and flooring and stuff like that. Because some apartments are pretty rough.
Mhm.
So
The point of this, you're supposed to be able to either like creating an ADU or taking something that's not livable, but I don't have the sense that they're going like much further than that. But there's a lot of gray area in there. And then the homeownership, sort of local housing agencies are overseeing a lot of this, so it could be a little bit depends on the individual unit.
right, yeah, that's a good point. Let's see.
You could
I
also
don't
have WAP do this. Oh, sorry, go on, Emily.
I'm not sure if this is what we're looking for, but I did just want to share EVT does have a home repair program,
Mhm.
and rental properties are eligible under that program. Um, so if you were thinking
Perfect.
about sharing program resources like that, I wanted to flag that one.
Yeah, I think it's a great, and I wonder if, I mean, maybe that goes in the section on homes that need like extra assistance to get through. Like I do think there is something both in and out of the rental context, which is this like you need to sort of bring together resources to do sort of the code stuff along with, the weatherization stuff, and that's going to help more properties get there. So maybe it belongs in that discussion.
That makes sense too. Yeah. And I think just flagging that
Mhm.
this also is eligible to renters.
Yeah, no, I think it totally makes sense. I think that totally makes sense. And saying like we need to do more of that makes, I just think there's something of like, I think it's not enough just to provide these resources. Like, I think you do have to have a fairly comprehensive suite of solutions and have like a single access point for people to be able to combine, options.
Really, yeah. I think because yeah, you can't put all your eggs in one basket, so to speak. So, but I also think on the same coin, it's important to be targeted about the approach. So targeting different, home characteristics or systems, so to speak. Like so, that would be like, targeting specifically multifamily stuff, which I think we're talking about here,
Mm-hmm.
or specific units such as mobile homes. Um, yeah, so I'm just reading through this language here. Given that I don't know a ton about this program, I mean, are we suggesting that we're basically tack on requirements for weatherization to this existing program? Is that what's see
Yeah,
what
or just like, I don't know, like if the state's investing in all these units and stuff, like maybe there is a way to just use existing delivery systems. Like I'm just thinking about like why landlords don't do it now. Like you will have to get someone separate to come in and do home repairs. If the unit's really in bad shape, it's probably most of your efforts will go to code enforcement, not weatherization assistance. Like I guess I was just thinking about like there's a clear moderate income rental gap. I mean, there's a low income renter gap too. Just we're just not doing enough from WAP, although the state's certainly invested in that. But yeah, there's nothing really available for moderate income households right now beyond will your landlord kind of decide to take advantage of efficiency Vermont's rebates? And so far, I think the answer is it's not happening a ton, like, and what would it take to kind of get there? I don't want to oversimplify. I'm just thinking about like what would we ask the state to do if they're going to listen.
well, I think the answer comes down to money.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if we're subsidizing it at, and correct me if I'm wrong, Emily, I'm pretty sure it's 75%, right, for moderate income folks. Uh, I mean, that's a substantial incentive. I know the home performance with Energy Star does have that incentive with depending on income. Um, but really, I guess that's the tricky part with the split incentive, right? Is that if the landlord doesn't pay for heat, although I think you might be on to something here, if they're already in there, like for example, with this VHIP program doing rehab, presumably when I hear rehabilitation, I'm thinking because I've been in some apartments, working with the cap agencies that were unlivable. And I'm kind of just picturing one of them now. And it's like, we're talking holes in the wall, floors ripped up, like just pretty much as bad as you can like imagine. If they're already in there doing that level of work, doesn't like I find it hard to believe that those folks would not like, okay, if you're doing electrical on the outside wall, how many folks are going to do the electrical and then just leave the wall cavity empty, you know? Doesn't really make sense to go ahead and rehab this whole thing and be like, oh, we're just going to skip the insulation. I think there definitely are some landlords that would do that. But if these are grant funds that are going to this VHIP program, maybe a requirement of getting the grant is to include weatherization improvements. That's exactly what you're saying. I think yeah. I'm sorry if I'm just catching up to that. This is like the first time I'm reading this, so
I mean, I just put this in now because this was stuff that I tried to sort of, get us a head start on this.
if you're going to get federal funds to rehab something, I think you should, yeah, it makes sense to me. That's a kind of a great. I think that's a great idea. Um,
It's an interesting program because it is, I mean, it is definitely like I think the state wasn't so much like the point of VHIP isn't so much to like get landlords to do their share. It's more like you inherited something that was in terrible shape, or you've got like a barn or something, and the state will give you like $40,000 rather than hoping for like $500,000 for a new home and stuff. So they think the idea is small scale and sort of doing stuff at the margins, sort of. And I don't know, like, I don't think they're totally ignoring weatherization because I don't think it is like this landlord has been cited for code of compliance. It's more just like, oh, could you do an ADU in your barn? Or like, did you inherit like a house that's in terrible shape that you could flip without a huge investment and turn it into like a rental property? That's the point. So I don't think there's like intentional like doing the least amount possible so much, but just more that like I did have a call about our RAP program early with the weatherization with one of the housing agencies who's doing VHIP, and they were interested in RAP sort of conceptually as sort of a gap filler for their program. And we never got really far just because the whole ownership and occupancy of the unit is like not super clear, because you are awaiting a renter who's supposed to be doing it. So we didn't think RAP was like the best fit, although we never said no. So that's all to say, I think there could be sort of unmet weatherization needs in these buildings that I don't know. And I don't think they're going so far as to like install heat pumps if there's another way to get a working system in there.
Right. I wonder if, because just in thinking about this, I mean, weatherization we know is expensive, and we know that like if you're a grant, I wonder if there's a way to tie the weatherization assistance program to VHIP and essentially make those two programs like partners in a way. I say that partners like lightly, but like, just like if you're going to get a VHIP grant, like part of that would be like include maybe like a energy audit through weatherization assistance program, or like an automatic unit that could be credited to weatherization, because if you would have to increase the grant funding substantially for somebody to include weatherization in that work they're already doing, because presumably, like the example you're giving is like an attached barn, for example. That's probably quite a bit of work just to make that to a point where it's like an actual apartment to begin with, and then weatherization on top of that could add, $10,000 or more. So I wonder, yeah, just seems like maybe those two should be linked somehow.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's not through the same agencies, so that definitely makes this fraught, I think, a little bit.
Who's this offered through? Is this
It's
Vermont?
through DHCD, so not OEO, and so it's like overseen by DHCD, and then the state like home ownership centers. So like for an equivalent area, like CVOEO serves like the Chittenden County area for weatherization, but like Champlain Housing Trust is offering this, I think. So that's
Okay.
definitely like different flavors of like who's doing this, which adds an additional one. Occupied projects, I'm just trying to think of like what's included. It has not been super specific about like who decides what's like to code and that kind of thing. Who selects the scope of work?
So I know like LIHEAP is linked with, um, well, there's linkages out there. Like LIHEAP and weatherization have a linkage. They share, lists with each other because they're housed in the same. I think when Richard Giddings came to talk to us, he has an office like a couple doors down from Jeff Wilcox. So they communicate regularly. I wonder if there's a way to bridge the gap between this program and weatherization. Maybe that's the overarching recommendation that we have. Use this as an example by saying, hey, we have this, weatherization assistance program. We're funneling, literally millions of dollars into it from IRA, federal funds. And it's, as we know, it's the focus of like a ton of discussion for how do we, get more weatherization. And everybody points to the weatherization assistance program, but it seems to me as though one of the primary recommendations or mechanisms should be, at least within state government, particularly if you're using government funds, should be to tie all these programs together. Like anybody who's working in the housing space, such as VHIP or like a LIHEAP, I say housing loosely, anybody that's like giving direct assistance to homeowners, related to their housing or living situation should be an automatic referral to the weatherization program. Because it strikes me that, basically what we're describing here is somebody using VHIP, going through this whole renovation process, and maybe let's say they don't weatherize anything and they just say, hey, I'm not going to pay for heat. I don't have time. I'm just going to put up new sheetrock and like that wall is going to stay empty. And then they rent it out. Where, if they were automatically referred to the weatherization program, they could, basically do it all at once. It just like makes
Like, there's a chance that this is being done to some extent, because most of these households should be WAP eligible. And ideally you would just do it while they're building it, but that's not really how
right.
WAP operates. So I can ask around for someone at like CHT,
Yeah.
one of the other ones, like, to what extent are you thinking about weatherization needs? I mean, the alternative is sort of what John McCormick has suggested, that WAP takes over responsibility for moderate income weatherization too. And I think that's just a real question of like, well, how do you make sure it doesn't do less of the low income weatherization? Like, we don't want that to happen. And like for properties that could still get by on incentives, like we'd like that to continue. So it's kind of like figuring out where it doesn't duplicate or divert resources is kind of the place where this goes. That's why I suggested VHIP, just as like, well, the state's doing this to an extent, but
It will also
mhm.
ask around at the department. Strikes me that this is probably something that someone knows about that deals more on the energy code side of things that we do. So yeah, and I guess, if weatherization assistance and VHIP are not communicating, seems like a no-brainer to me. Especially in the context of the discussion around clean heat standard. If we're trying to get gains here, this is like, let's basically get everybody on the same page is the bottom line is like what we're talking about.
And
So
they may already be doing it. I didn't see anything that's like they keep talking about meeting code. And I do think that is fundamentally different than like make sure that it's adequately weatherized or like well weatherized and stuff. So I imagine it's a patchwork, but I'll ask like how
yeah,
if they try to get any sort of energy focus beyond like, yep, the wall has insulation. So I don't, yeah. So I'll look into that. Let's keep moving on, and I'll try to circle back to see if I can find any evidence of like has anyone kind of already tackled that. Okay.
I will also ask around and
Mm-hmm.
but really like where you're going with that section. I mean, it also, you just said it. I think the weatherization assistance program, one of our primary recommendations, I think should be, and this is a great venue to do it in. I think to make the suggestion in here, if we're truly concerned about equity in this space, the weatherization assistance program probably does need to take up the suggestion from Mr. McCormick and start doing moderate income work.
Yeah, I mean, we could put that. I mean, do we want to make that like an actual recommendation? Like,
I think the amount that we've discussed the weatherization program and like the pitfalls of like folks that don't qualify for it, I think at least among the equity advisor group, I feel as though there would be support for it. And I guess at the end of the day, that's what we're here for. We're here to make recommendations, and then someone needs to make the recommendation to the legislature that this should be on the table. At least in circles that I've been in, I think that's certainly come up in conversation, but it's sort of like obviously there's all sorts of things tied to that, like increased funding, like new income guidelines, etc. That's it's more than just saying, hey, go do moderate income, but the conversation needs to start somewhere. And it's a fairly easy recommendation to make because the system's already in place, essentially.
I think maybe that belongs in the low income section or the moderate income
Moderate.
section, maybe to talk about, where we think people are falling through, and then that could maybe be a suggestion. I think we have to be careful to be like, don't reduce what you're doing to low income households, and like if it needs to be a priority, I do think low income households have, more immediate dangerous needs, but you could use existing ones. So let's take that up in the moderate income section. I'll make sure, I think Emily drafted that and might be assigned to redraft it. So that might be something to think about. I think it has to be sort of narrowly tailored to the low moderate income section, like not above 120% AMI. Don't compete with existing programs for like people who are going to do this anyways, but recognize that like it's not just the money. I think there's the hand holding and the ability to sort of deal with other things like electrical and stuff that makes WAP more well equipped to deal with some of these projects.
Absolutely. And I could see a world in which, because they already have the WAP rank So the higher number that each client in that system has, the more priority they're given.
Mhm.
So usually it's the lowest of low income they'll have like a rank of like 30, whereas somebody who like barely meet the guidelines by like $1 has a rank of 1. So they already have it built in that they have to go after the highest ranks first. So I could see a world in which, hey, if you have moderate income, you're going to have a lower rank. So you're in the system, you're just going to get served after the low income folks get served.
And I wonder if there's a way that if we did talk about sort of a matrix approach to say that like moderate income renters probably have more priority than moderate income homeowners because that's going to be a challenge, and like there are groups within groups. If you were gonna expand WAP beyond the 80% or lower depending on the funding source, there's a got to be a way to think about who really needs this more than other households. So I think the moderate income section is the way to do it, and we just nod to say like in addition to investing in WAP, which I think we'll talk about in the low income section a lot. Okay, so I will try to go through this and just see if I can get a sense to like maybe VHIP is already doing a great job with weatherization and I'm wrong, but it would be helpful to know if there's sort of existing venues.
Sure.
And then the next thing that I did was so this is about the window heat pumps, and it was saying, we should invest in window heat pumps. And I did sort of encourage, and maybe we can put more detail. We don't know the long-term benefits of this, but like the legislature, if it's sort of promising, the legislature should find ways to invest in it and make sure that it's accessible to people. So a lot of this is sort of rehashing kind of what we talked about in the memo, or I think what we will talk about in the memo. I sort of alluded to we should make sure this stays consistent about our recommendations. I'll put a note to
I wonder if we make a suggestion, and I would want to get Jeff Wilcox's input on this, but make the window heat pumps when they are, actually largely available on the market and eligible measure under the WAP program.
Oh, okay, we can add that too.
Because then you could, as an energy auditor, you can go in and say, hey, you're working for the client. The client's in a multifamily building. You quickly recognize that maybe that unit's all cut up into different rooms. And you could then say, hey, let's replace your window AC that's using a bunch of energy and you can heat with this as well. That's a huge win-win, I think.
Do we want to talk about portable or window unit heat pumps in the homes that have problems section as well?
That's the language that I sent over.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't read that yet, but
I
okay,
could
so
see if that would
we
fit.
can include it twice and just say, the WAP program could make use of this as well.
I have just a comment on the first sentence of investments in window heat pumps.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me just see which is that?
Right under
yeah.
investments. You cannot buy
Okay.
window-based heat pumps yet, so I think that maybe just say like through existing pilot programs. I just don't want somebody to read this and be like, oh, let me go and try and find where I can buy one when the
Yeah.
efficient window insert heat pumps that we're talking about here are not available yet.
It's a good point.
Available for, no, I totally know what you mean. Should I say like for limited purchase or available on the market? Or I guess they're not on the market.
So we could say as they become available to the wider market.
Yeah, but
I think
this sentence, like we could say in pilot projects or in limited pilot projects, maybe.
or just beginning to become available in limited pilot projects. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the window pumps are just becoming available. They're a promising new product that is currently a limited pilot through Efficiency Vermont or
oh, did it remove? I thought I put Efficiency Vermont in. Did that go somewhere? Did you take that out, Emily, or did I do something wrong?
I didn't take it out. I don't
Okay,
see
no, I
it.
mean, sorry, I didn't mean like an accusatory way. I
No.
was like, did I do something like, okay, I don't know what happened there, but I do have it. I cited the like, oh, I guess it just stops here. That's weird. That's so odd. I will put, um, I will put a citation in for there because I had one and then, like I linked the blog post. Oh, did it do something weird? Oh, that's so annoying. I think all the like citations are to like my notepad, which is the most annoying thing ever. Okay.
See your initials and then it says 1. I'm seeing
Yeah,
the
but
spell section, right? Yeah.
okay, does it have it? Okay, so it does include in the, I don't know, it says it's like linking to my SharePoint on the in-text one, but I do see it's on the bottom one, so I don't know what's going on. Okay. I will add that before I send this off to someone. So let me just go to, um, okay, that's weird. Okay, this reaffirms that I do not like Google Docs for any sort of writing exercise. Okay. Okay, and I will put Mia to put, okay, Mia to put main to post. Okay. Okay. So basically, I think this says like this could be really exciting. We have some feedback in the draft rule that we need to make sure like matches what we actually put in the draft rule, and needs to be verified. So yeah, I mean, I think it would be okay to keep it vague that like some sort of investment. I think it's the type of thing that would largely happen with Efficiency Vermont anyways, if this could kind of be proven that it works. I don't think the legislature would be like opposed to it, or it would necessarily even happen at the legislative level. But I think we're just kind of saying like, hey, this is something to keep an eye on. And again, make sure that you don't see a conflict that you can't fix easily in the thanks, Emily. Yeah, I did put that, yeah, link. That's so weird. Let me just put that in. Okay. And then you know, I just added the idea that like we may need to think about like if this technology is like really transformative and great. There's a lot of landlords who don't let you have window units. I know people use portable air conditioners, but they don't work well. So I kind of doubt that like if anyone comes up with a sort of the air conditioner units that are, I forget, I think they're called portable ones, but you know the ones that kind of like have the tube that go into the window. I had one in an apartment and it didn't work. So I guess I'm saying like the current like landlords often will say like you're not allowed to have an air conditioner because it can damage the unit and it can be unsafe, but like you can have a portable one, and the portable ones like are more expensive and I don't think work super well. And so I think this sort of second part was basically saying like if the window heat pumps work really well, you're going to have to make sure that renters have access to it sort of over the long term, and also like not having access to cooling is going to be really bad as we adapt. And so this is kind of generally an equity thing. So I don't know if you have any thoughts about, I don't know that I love these recommendations the way they're phrased, but just trying to get something on paper. So sorry, Ben.
I think that makes sense. It's because you kind of highlight the fact that it's both energy saving in this case and climate adaptation, basically. Reducing thermal stress for folks that install them in areas where they may not have been able to afford them previously. So I think that's really good. Um, yeah, I mean, I like that language.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think this is kind of distant, but I mean, I think in like 2 years we could have, I mean, at any time, we could have such extreme weather that like it could be fairly untenable to not allow air conditioning. And I checked our sort of rental housing safety guidelines say it has to be habitable inside, but if you're not allowing air conditioners, like I don't know that, like, I mean, without code enforcement, we're not really getting anywhere with that. So I think that's probably something to think about. Okay, I'll go through the other sort of recommendations.
When you say code enforcement, you talking energy code enforcement?
No, I'm talking about rental safety enforcement, but we should clarify that. So this is
I
the
was
next
just saying, because just as a departmental position, we can't at this time support any language that says that we need to enforce building energy codes. So I would have to dissent to that in the final report. I mean,
Yeah, no, I get that.
but I would dissent, yeah.
I mean, we did sort of talk in the group about like, well, to what extent are like energy codes being followed? I think it's like kind of a interesting question, especially as the state gets more aggressive with, you know, the building energy code as we head towards net zero, like who's actually following this? I mean, I think in most, but not all new construction, you're probably getting at least like a minimum standard of quality, just because if you're bothering to build something new, you know, it's certainly going to be better than some of these, you know, 50-year-old units that have like no insulation and stuff. So yeah, I get what you're saying, Ben. I just think in terms of this, I mean, basically we had talked about this, and I don't know sort of what's politically possible or not, but I think just the idea, I thought it was good to sort of end on, you know, if the state really in a long-term position wants to overcome the split incentive and get everyone off fossil fuels, then like we've created some nice like incentives and use of technology and programs, but like it may come down to enforcement and making landlords do it. And I think for me, this wasn't like a the state needs to do this like right now, especially because Burlington's has been so challenged with workforce issues. But I think it's worth us sort of putting a stake in the ground and saying like you're not really going to get everyone on board until you start making people have to get on board, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I personally agree with what you're saying. Yep. Uh,
And I
but
wanted to put it in a way that didn't feel wildly controversial or even that we're
yeah, I don't think the language that's currently there is controversial. I was just saying that if we do want to go so far to say that we need we need a statewide building energy code enforcement, then the department doesn't
yeah.
support that.
No, I get that. I mean, right now it just says, and I think I drafted some language that I thought would be better in this section. Let me just go further up, because I did have some, I thought a note just saying like, um, when we're talking about gaps. Oh yeah, I did want to put a section in which I'll show you where I'm popping it in so that it like kind of makes sense what we're talking about. I'll direct your attention to it because I thought it would be helpful. So policy and funding gaps. So we didn't really go over this, but I wanted to just, so this is under policy and funding gaps, and I just sort of like stuffed this in here, but I added some language about how you know, Vermont's rental health and safety code has basic requirements to be weather tight and have properly functioning heat systems, but it's one really hard for landlords for renters to make an appeal because it's kind of convoluted. And they did make a change, so now it's overseen by the Division of Fire Safety, which I do think is an improvement over it used to be until last year town based. So it was like your local health code officer would do it, and like it could be like related to the landlord who is, I think someone found a case where it's like related to the landlord they were complaining about, like literally in a small enough town. So I think the idea is the fire safety should professionalize it, and that's an improvement, but it's still a complaint, and you can be, you know, wary that your landlord is going to retaliate if you make a complaint. So I thought that would be helpful to talk about funding gaps, to kind of put that up front. Let me just see.
Yeah, it's a good. good find. Or
Okay. So I just wanted to sort of get that through there. And then I'm just trying to think if that's the right place. Because yeah, I mean, we talked about financial challenges with the split incentive. But yeah, I think it's a policy gap. And I wanted to put that in so that it's not like confusing when we talk about the rental health and safety code kind of not being enforced or could be adapted to include uh, that. So those are the things where I think we sort of had, I mean, I think they can be refined, but I think those things sort of moderate a way to help renters outside of WAP somehow. Getting heat pump technology or window heat pump technology in, and potentially some flavor of code enforcement. I think were the sort of big things that I think this group was, had kind of discussed. And I think we can go through these sort of other these other things that are kind of kicking around the recommendations, but those were the big ones that I really wanted to make sure we would
Can we talk about that first comment you added for the recommendations,
yes,
and
absolutely.
like expanding WAP? I guess I'm not, you mentioned how like we'd want to be clear to not have overlap with existing programs.
Mhm.
And I'm just not really sure, yeah, what you were thinking in that and how to not overlap with existing programs that are set up to support moderate income weatherization.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't, again, I think it's always difficult to decide like which sections this belongs to.
Hmm.
I think it's mostly a renter problem, but not exclusively a renter problem. That, the people who just miss out on WAP eligibility. I think, I don't know. I think we should sort of deal with that in this section. But I think my point was like, well, to the extent that someone was sort of moderate income but has the means to do it anyways, like you don't want to sort of create problems by doing this. I think it could be set at lower moderate income, or you could have I don't know. I mean, these are just some things we were talking about and I was trying to put comments on, but I don't know that I have like a clear recommendation for such a program. Uh,
I would just, yeah, I would just recommend that, like, reading that feels like a very clear overlap to
yeah, no,
existing
I know.
programs.
That's fair.
And so I would, when we have like the full discussion of this, I'll probably push back and
Mhm.
um, yeah, a lot of EVT's comments lately have been um, focused on consistency and urging the commission to not create new programs that
Yeah.
already exist in the state. And I think this is a good example of that. And yeah,
yeah, we don't
so
want to overlap with what EVT's already, like the home performance of the Energy Star program that already exists. So it's
right.
actually a great point. I wonder if obviously workforce is an issue. So I wonder to what extent, or maybe the recommendation is that, hey, the contractors that are doing home performance with Energy Star could essentially do the moderate income jobs with the funding from the weatherization program. Basically be subcontractors for the WAP program, and you know get paid get paid basically through that program to do the work there, but also keep doing the home performance with Energy Star program for those higher tier of moderate income folks. It's kind of getting weedy, but basically, there has, I know, been a broader kind of simmering discussion about how to increase workforce, and one of those suggestions I know in the past has been to contract out with outside entities that are not weatherization, uh, not cap agency crews. I know that's what Massachusetts does. In the Mass Save program, I used to work for one actually, private contractors,
Mhm.
weatherization contractors that work for the Mass Save program and get paid, and follow the same tech manual and everything. I wonder if that's basically what we're talking about here. That seems like it might be. Because with Mass Save, they do everything, they do all incomes, just the
I,
incentive levels change.
yeah,
So,
I think that focusing on the the workforce piece is really important from my perspective. And then again, sharing that like EVT did just launch a moderate income home repair project in service towards weatherization projects. So I agree that there could be, yeah, I don't have thoughts past what Ben was saying, but I agree that that weatherization, that workforce piece could be really important. And then also just sharing that I think it could be disruptive to have customers do home repair through OEO and then weatherize through Efficiency Vermont or another existing weatherization program. And so I think that in addition to like thinking about expanding existing programs and not creating overlap, another piece would be like making sure projects are streamlined and there isn't inefficient customer experience going from program to program, if that makes sense.
That makes a ton of sense. I also think probably we're wading into waters here where I think like might be a bit above our pay grade, so to speak. I think it would surprise me if, folks at EVT and the department haven't already discussed this. And, maybe I'm ignorant to that fact. But yeah, I think given, what we're discussing here, I think that should probably be an option on the table. How it exactly works, I think, is very complex. There would need to be some kind of agreement that, we'd want the clients to be served. The ultimate end product would be for moderate income, homeowners or renters get the benefit, but like, how does EVT benefit from that if they were expending their own capital or, using their own programs to, do market uplift, et cetera. So yeah, and I think also what it sounds like is we're talking about these are recommendations outside of the clean heat standard to be clear, so
Yep. These are policy program recommendations.
I think it comes down to like where it's not working. And the reason this sort of touched off with the renter one is, yeah, I think we can say that like generally things aren't working for renters, the way it is now. You set aside the clean heat standard. I mean, you've got the WAP program and that renters who kind of just move into a better unit don't really have any recourse. And I think that's where we should focus. And I totally hear you, Emily, about not duplicating it. So I did kind of say like maybe this is a WAP discussion and we're going to talk about WAP elsewhere, but maybe it is just a renter thing and just saying like I don't know. I mean, I do worry about just saying like, well, the WAP program can do it and we would just invest more in sort of 80 to 120% rental properties, which I think the market is not really serving it organically. Like, I don't think too many landlords are taking advantage of the Efficiency Vermont rebates, but yeah, I do think that there is a real risk tying this to moderate income households, sort of more generally. I think that is a risk. So I don't know. I mean, just taking it back to, I think the VHIP thing is not particularly a bad idea, assuming that they're not weatherization focused now, because that is sort of, I mean, as far as we know, not serving WAP eligible properties. But yeah, I think there's a way about like, if renters from 80 to 120% AMI are like kind of not going to be served under the market, then like what is needed to get them there? I mean, we've talked about code enforcement as one way to do it, but I don't know, like, is there a way to get WAP to do that and not crowd out other parts of the moderate income market? I think delving into like what the problem is going to be helpful here.
Yep. My mind, everything you just said, I agree with. It's really it's very complex space, especially given, one having been a practitioner in that space before. I think, you also have the issue that the weatherization program utilizes their own technical reference manual and does on-site verification, whereas EVT funded projects utilize primarily the TRM. And don't do on-site verification. So if you're going to pull in EVT contractors to the weatherization to basically make them comply with weatherization assistance program rules, they would have to effectively have their own quality control inspection process, etc. So that, that's like way in the weeds for like what we need to be talking about, but sort of some background. I guess just making the general recommendation that the program, there is that gap in folks, basically moderate income folks are not being served as much as they need to be to minimize harm from volatile fossil fuel pricing.
So I
Probably
mean,
for
mhm.
yeah.
I mean, I think Emily brings up a good point. Are we happy with the way the section is? Do we want to cut it out if we don't have a strong recommendation? I mean, I don't know what the legislature takes away from this other than like we see this as a gap, and we could be more explicit that like if you're not eligible for WAP, the split incentive means that your landlord is probably not going to do this. And assuming you can't just move, you know. So I don't know. I don't feel like super confident. I think VHIP is a good program, and I don't know if it's like problem is that it's not doing enough weatherization because that's not really what it was designed to do. But it does feel kind of off for us to be like, oh, the state should do more of this when we don't know what this is or how to construct such a program without kind of destroying other things, you
I
know?
wonder if we just increase funding and basically increase funding for the EVT moderate income home repair program. I mean, because I can see that one of the probably a major hurdle for moderate income landlords would be, let's say if they have vermiculite, they're probably like zero like chance that they're gonna take the initiative and do that on their own. I mean, or close to zero, because it's like you're looking at like 20 to 30 grand. So like where's the incentive in that, especially if they don't pay heat, they're not going to touch it. So but if the EVT program exists, maybe we funnel more funds into that, make that, advertise it, do some market uplift there, and then the EVT that gets leveraged more. You deal with the home repair, which is typically some of the more expensive stuff, and then that moderate income landlord could then lean on, maybe 75% off for qualified tenants, etc., and then do for the actual weatherization piece. But knowing the condition of rental households in Vermont, or rental buildings, that's probably what the hangup is.
I
I
mean, I think, oh, sorry, go on. Yeah.
I agree. I think just that like piece of we I want to stay away from like recommending policy changes or programs specifically, and I think that like something that I think would be more simple to recommend is keeping that like first piece. The main recommendation is just expanding um, program funding and maybe highlighting some programs that are relevant. And I think, yeah, I can share information on the moderate income um, home repair program that was just launched. But I agree that like keeping it high level and recommending expanding programs makes sense instead of thinking of in the
What
weeds.
happens next? Yeah, I just the
Yeah,
broad
WAP.
increase funding for moderate income home repair through Efficiency Vermont.
You
And I
know,
think
I
I'll
do think,
let others figure out
mhm.
the details. Yeah.
I mean, I think that brings it back to, I think in the moderate income section, we should talk about that. Like, I think that makes sense. I don't know that, like, I think there's a possibility landlords use the home repair program. I don't know how likely it is since we're still locked into the split incentive thing. Like, it might make them more likely to, but I mean, it'll be helpful to look at the data, but I just don't think there's much moderate income weatherization just happening in general in rental properties. And I think you'd have to like I think you need something with strings specifically targeted for rental housing that makes it different from like homeowner home repair. You know what I mean? Like I think that's important too. I don't know that like we can say that the rental repair fund would be used especially by landlords. I think it's a good program to be clear.
Yeah. No, it's a great point. Yeah, it's such a difficult challenge. Yeah, it's so maybe just keep it general. I mean, I don't know if we never necessarily have a charge to go deeper with our recommendation, but I think just kind of pointing like, hey, like this is a program that can be leveraged more, like figure it out kind of thing. Like just connecting the dots for the legislature or for folks, and then they can give them the tools to like, hey, here's all the programs, and
I
it's
support
what we
that.
got.
Then that sounds fine to me. So how does this show up in like this section? Do we want to take out the thing about VHIP? Do you want to
I
add in something? Like how do we get this to work
think
actually?
the more recommendations we have, I think the VHIP is a good recommendation because it is sort of, at least in my mind, having not been familiar with it, it's sort of an obscure kind of program. that probably it's, obviously don't know the details, but I say we keep it in there. I think Sans need to sort of like throw some darts at the wall and see what sticks here. Because it's not like we have like dozens and dozens of recommendations. I think the VHIP one is a good start.
Okay.
And then I would
Any other
keep,
text that, yeah.
yeah. So what do we got? 3 recommendations? We got VHIP, rental, code enforcement, safety code enforcement, which I think is a good call.
Well, there's more stuff too. Let me go through what we have. Those are the ones where I kind of gelled into something reasonable, and there's a bunch of other sort of like vague text, you know?
Yeah.
So let's just look through some of this stuff. So I'm going to page, I can never tell what we're on, but this is the sections, it's page 8, and it says engaging and incentivizing landlords and financing solutions for nonprofit housing. So this is, yeah, so let's see if there's anything. I wonder if this part that I'm highlighting is about, like adding it into like communicating with landlords and having an information resource as well. Like, could that be put in the sort of opportunities section that we just talked about? Does that work for you all?
I think that makes sense.
Okay, I'm gonna copy and paste it and we'll see if we can get a place that we like it. You can say one challenge. And I don't know if it's clean heat standards, but okay. I think this is like fine. I don't know about getting renters to engage with their landlord. I guess I just don't know how that would work in practice because like the landlord will almost certainly know it's you who called, so you might as well just ask your landlord essentially. I mean, I guess it's different if the renter calls the state and the state calls the landlord, but yeah, I just don't know. I don't think anyone's going to take advantage of a program like that just because it kind of has the same challenge of like your landlord could retaliate if they sort of see you as a problem. So maybe it's like we just get rid of, maybe it's a centralized call center or clearinghouse where landlords can seek advice. Is that already existing through Efficiency Vermont?
That already exists in the weatherization program. So if you're low income,
Yeah.
but you can apply for the weatherization program without your landlord knowing, and then the weatherization program just will call the landlord and be like, "Hey, your tenant just applied.
Yeah,
Like,
okay.
are you cool with this?" Basically, and it's a yes or no from there.
Right, but so if I'm a moderate, if I have a landlord and don't have WAP eligible tenants, can I know Efficiency Vermont has like services where you can just call and chat with someone. Is that available to anybody or including?
Off the top of my head, I believe so. We have folks that you can talk to figure out which program is right, but I can follow up with more information around that. But that is
Okay.
part of our program uptake work, and yeah.
Yeah, and I assume like you would let people know generally about like resources that are available, like rebates and stuff if they called. So are we okay getting rid of this section if we don't think it's anything new?
I would be okay with that. Yeah, I just don't see that's so likely. I don't see the state setting up a clearinghouse call center. That already actually was proposed and that got shot down already. The recommendation was to have I think five new positions at the Department of Public Service to basically have like a uh whatever, it was like a 3-digit call-in number, whichever one's still available, like 511 or whatever, and it would be energy assistance at the Department of Public Service. That did not move forward, so that's already been discussed.
Mhm. And I do feel like with some of these suggestions, it is like, I think you're describing Efficiency Vermont when I hear some of these suggestions, like in some flavor, even if it's not doing exactly what the person thought about.
Right. I mean, I think it's a well-intentioned thought, but yeah, I don't know if we necessarily need to include that language there.
And then, the next sentence sort of, I don't know. I do think that nonprofit landlords like kind of do know what resources are out there. They are heavily reliant on grants, but I don't know. I mean, I always like to see more funding go to affordable housing, and we are sort of facing a long-term backlog of sort of properties that are going to have pretty significant capital maintenance needs. But to the extent, like when properties are rehabbed, they're sort of extensively rehabbed for weatherization, and that's not usually the biggest sort of problem in a rehab. It's just more like the housing dollars that support like replacing the kitchens and like the elevator and stuff. And so I find in rehab projects, the weatherization isn't like the biggest problem. I mean, that we may kind of run into more funding challenges as we sort of get into a more extensive backlog that needs to be dealt with, but I think housing funding will be the bottleneck. So
I think
are we?
affordable housing as well. That seems like it would probably, there's a good chance that at least one of those, some percentage of those units would be eligible for the weatherization assistance program already. So
Yeah, I think they are. I think all of our programs meet that WAP threshold. So it does happen there, and I don't find, from what I've heard, it doesn't seem like WAP is a bottleneck for those projects that I'm aware of. Because I don't think many private landlords are participating with like 3E thermal, just because like on the larger scale.
right, yeah, I was just gonna say that. Yeah, 3 thermal probably. I actually did a couple projects out in Brattleboro that were affordable housing projects, and ended up it was really, really positive outcomes.
Yeah, I think usually affordable housers are the ones pushing for projects, and when they reach a point where they can be recapitalized and get more housing funding, that's when the projects happen. But it's not that there are no problems. I just think it's sort of different than the private sector. So I'm just going to go through here some of this. Additional financing options. We could talk about lending solutions for landlords who are doing it. I kind of don't know who would do that. I mean,
That
there
would
is
be
like,
basically
yeah.
like a wrap program for commercial.
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, wrap can only, it's kind of unique. I think you'd actually be more looking, since the on-bill nature of wrap would be challenging. I think you'd be looking at a home energy loan that serves larger properties. It would just be sort of a different flavor of it, and I just don't know, like, would a landlord take out money? I mean, property owners take out loans all the time if they're redoing their properties, but they do have to expect a return, and that's often results in they're upgrading their property and they're going to look for new tenants, that kind of thing. I don't think it's like a bad idea. I just think, one, the state has to find someone who's going to lend to sort of non-affordable housing landlords who are doing this. I don't know that we've sort of proven that's not like financing isn't available for them. Maybe it's not like really great financing that would encourage them to do like really comprehensive energy approaches, but I don't know. I don't want to like be like, no. I mean, we could say that the state could look into it. Do you want to say that the state could look into lending for landlords?
I'm trying to think of like how this would fit into the overall like energy policy space.
I could put it like here about this one.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I could. I'm just wondering. Something tells me I feel like that already exists. Like, is that?
I don't think it does, like in a home energy loan kind of way. I think you'd probably just have the landlord secure like regular financing. I don't think the home energy loan applies for renter properties, as far as I
You're
know.
correct on that. Yeah.
So I don't know, maybe.
Yeah, we could potentially expand home energy loan uh style programs to include rental properties. Um, but again, it comes back to split incentive. Like, I don't know, like if would a landlord be encouraged to do that? It would have to be at some favorable rate for
Yeah.
sure. I think that also could overlap with if you were seriously considering an expansion of the weatherization assistance program to moderate income properties, that would be covered essentially because effectively that landlord would now have free weatherization for their moderate income
Hmm.
multifamily. So that would be kind of encompassed within that recommendation if you were to seriously move that forward. I think.
I don't know if you're going to find proof that the landlord could not self-fund the upgrades. I mean, it's not the most common way to do it. Usually with lending, you're trying to prove that someone can pay you back. You know what I mean? I don't know that usually in the housing space, it's more like, we'll promise you'll do these things if we give you money, like serve low income households. And that's the carrot rather than. So I don't know. I don't know about the proof that they could self-fund. I just haven't seen anything like that except for like homeowners who are sort of doing it in their own properties. You know what I mean? I think saying that like I think this part like should be financially responsible for home repairs, but which I think we already talked about once these upgrades are complete. Okay, I mean, I think it's fine to put some sort of financing thing. I haven't seen a need, but I think there could be a version. I mean, people really do seem to be taking to VHIB. Like that seems to be going well. I do think there is like having a 10-year forgivable loan does seem to be an incentive, and maybe there's like a less intense version, but a sort of, reasonable approach on that. I'm just gonna go through really quickly and just see. So I'm gonna get rid of this. It's not gone forever since it's in previous sections, but I think we just included them. We talked about regulatory barriers. I think we kind of covered the different approaches for different housing types to an extent. I don't know that that adds anything. Okay, and then I don't know about an assessment. Like I think it's nice, but I don't know that if it does anything.
I think that the needs assessment, I don't know. I think I just where's the funding going to come from for that? Especially if there's no like clear outcome.
Yeah. Okay, are
I
you
think
okay getting
it's
rid of that?
unlikely to be implemented. Yeah.
Okay. And then there's this weird parking lot where I think she's like, I don't know what this is.
Yeah, this is all kind of just like a
Mm,
conversation we had like 6 months ago stuff.
yeah.
Yep.
Okay. And then these citations are kind of disastrous. Okay. So one thing before I want to make sure we wrap up, one thing I did want to definitively get rid of is I think this VHCB thing is not relevant. I think they do efficiency improvements, but in affordable housing. I don't think I haven't been able to figure out what this is about. And I think she found something on VHCB's website about that, but I don't think it's like a rental improvement program in general. So if that's okay, I'm gonna just delete that, okay?
Sure. Yeah. Where was that one? Oh, you have it highlighted. Yeah.
It's under policy and funding gaps.
This program's, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we've made really good progress overall. This is kind of a weird formatting nightmare, but I think we're actually really close. So I think, you know, we still have some highlighted assignments. I still have some like citations I corrected that I can send along to somebody to incorporate. I honestly can't remember who we asked to finalize this report when Ashira and I were trying to make a recommendations document, but that will come out in the next day or so. So it may have been Pike since he started this, but I honestly can't remember who we asked. So I will make sure whoever does this basically has like, you know, a pretty, you know, has this, and ask them to just fix the citations and add any, like I have a few like Mia to add citation kind of thing. I know there's a few other things that, you know, Ben, you were going to look through the Burlington weatherization ordinance. I think the point of that is just to say like, well, here's an example of where they did code enforcement and there's just been real challenges in making it happen. So I acknowledge that when I talked about code enforcement, that it's not just like a silver bullet that will solve all our problems. But I think just acknowledging that, which Pike kind of highlighted that text last time. And then Emily, you talked about data on sort of non-WAP renter projects and some of the existing programs that Efficiency Vermont offers. But I think we're really close to this section. I think we've got some like reasonable recommendations, and we'll make sure that the EAG has the whole EAG has an opportunity to comment final time. But I'd love to sort of put this section to bed.
Yeah. Yeah. This looks pretty darn good.
Okay.
You know, obviously, yeah, the formatting's kind of funky here, but
Yeah, it got really bad. I'll have to see if I can stick it back into Word, but yeah, okay. So I want to make sure we take public comment. So I'll do that in a second. But so Ben, Emily, it sounds like you're good with this to a reasonable extent, and you know, it's not the final time to approve it. Okay, so we'll do that. And then next time we'll take a look at low income households unless anything unforeseen comes up, but that'll be what we work on next. So if we can come to this time session like pretty prepared with that, that would be great if you have a chance to look at the draft so far. And I'll encourage, yeah.
Did you say low income or moderate income?
I think we talked about low income next time with this working group. We may, I don't know if we planned which to tackle in the full EAG. I don't think we'll get to moderate incomes in this sort of working session, but I do think the renters and the low income sections are going to be the real like complicated one, and the rest can sort of be done individually and approved within the full EAG. So the dream. Okay. Sounds good. So I will follow up. Okay, I will quickly take some public comment. John, I see you joined. Let me know if you would like to make a public comment in the time we have left. Also, Alex or I think Anthea is gone.
I'm John McCormick.
Hi, John.
Thank you. The commissioners issued a report on October 1, and including in the status report, it said we are considering an alternative concept. I have contacted Commissioner McNamara to try to get an understanding what kind of public participation and what's the timeline for this. I've gotten no response, and I'm wondering, have any of you, or has the EAG been told that there would be a process by which the EAG and others could comment on an alternative concept?
Yeah, I don't think we've heard anything more on this since you were last at our full EAG meeting. I certainly haven't. Ben, just confirming that you don't know anything additional?
yeah, same. I have not heard anything additional. Yeah, so I think that still must be being developed, I suppose.
Yeah, and just to kind of emphasize, you know, I think the EAG will do the best with what we have, but we don't know that we will get any sort of details on a program to comment on in our final report, which is kind of our focus at this point. But we'll be keeping an eye out for information from the commission, but I don't think we know anything more. I think I would emphasize that coming to the October 30th session, if you can, or submitting written comments after that, even if we don't have the particulars of another program, I'd emphasize sort of what your concerns or priorities would be in that process.
Well, when I consider that the status report focused on Act 62, I think what they're hinting to is Act 62 is the alternative.
Right.
Ben, do you have maybe Ben has a comment on that?
Sure.
To reference that, I think my understanding is that, they're going to utilize or bring to the fore a lot of those same recommendations that were made back when Act 62 report came out. But we haven't gotten any additional information to that end. But we are expecting a more finalized, thorough secondary option that they, had an opinion on there, and they draft, or the companion report, that'll be basically released at the time of the, January 15th to the legislature. So at this point, we're not anticipating getting anything in advance of that.
Do you think it will not be something that the public can comment on as it's being prepared?
Yeah, I think the way we've conceptualized that is that, the Clean Heat Standard is the policy option on the table currently. And then, as they deliver that to the legislature, this is the PUC, as they deliver that, the Clean Heat Standard, findings to the legislature, they will also have this alternative proposal for the legislature to consider, which I assume at that time they will, once it's out in the public, folks can make comment and testify, etc. about it.
Well, see, there's no time available, really. That I can't believe, and I'm going to continue to force the issue with the Commissioner McNamara. There has to be public input. I mean, there has to be public input. This can't be something that he pulls out of an envelope on January 15th.
Yeah. Like Mia said, the opportunity for the public info session there on the October 30th, which is next Wednesday.
There'll be nothing to comment on regarding it. You see, that's right. The issue. You can comment on something that hasn't even been discussed with the EAG. How can we do that? There's nothing there.
I was just suggesting raising your concerns, directly to the commissioner at that meeting probably is your best bet.
Okay, well, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Ben. I appreciate that.
Yep.
Thank you for your time. Goodbye.
The same you. Yep.
Thanks. Emily's gone, so I think we kind of have called to a close, but we are over time. Thanks, everybody. I will stop the recording and end the session. Thanks for your work, and I'll make the follow-ups that I mentioned on the meeting. Thanks, Ben.
See ya.